Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Outliers YouTube channel and podcast series and our show, Get to Know. I'm your host, DP Lyle, and I'm here with my partner in crime, Kathleen Antrim.
Thanks, Doug. It is so great to be here. Oh, we've got a good one for you today. We have got a writer. She's done quite a bit on television with Family Guy and Salem. She's now written a really interesting book that personally I'm very excited about. Matchmaking, as we all know, single. So excited to welcome to the show Jaydi Samuels Kuba. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Yes. Yeah, you got it right, which is rare. So
Well, thanks. As I said, I'm very excited to have you. And most of our viewers know that I like to dig in a little bit. So I'd like to go back to your childhood. And I'd like to know if you feel anything about your childhood contributed to you becoming a writer for television, books, what have you, matchmaker as well. Were you an introverted child, introverted child? Were you a child who had imaginary friends? Did you read a lot? Were you outgoing? Tell us about it.
first of all, I love these questions because usually right out the gate, it's just everyone wants to know about the matchmaking business. So I very rarely, I guess this is called get to know the author. So
Right.
I'm excited that I get a different set of questions than I typically receive. In terms of my childhood, I would say the biggest contributing factor, outside of just I was always drawn to books and from, I wrote my first book, I think, in kindergarten. um, my parents were just really encouraging. They never tried to force me to, gravitate more toward STEM field, like something professionally in the STEM field. They saw that I had an interest in writing poetry at a young age and playing with my stuffed animals and having them do my homework with me. So I definitely had a very vivid imagination, and it typically expressed myself really well through the written word. Um, Excelled in my English classes. I loved correcting teachers' grammar. That was a problem. I used to get in trouble for reading too much at school, which is kind of a funny thing, but I was definitely more introverted when it came to interacting with peers, at least at the elementary school and middle school level. I My parents had a parent teacher conference where they were told I was reading too much. I had mastered the art of navigating the hallway without looking up. I could just, by looking down, I could read and see people's feet. And I would go from class to class reading. Back when we had those desks, that had the openings where you would put your pencils in your notebook, I would have an open book and I would like half pay attention to what the teacher was saying and I would half be reading whatever I was reading. And the school that I went to for ages had the double digit club where they would actually have tests where if you read 10 or more books and you would pass an actual test on the book to prove that you read it, essentially, if you scored a certain percentage or higher, you would get a point, and then if you got 10 or more points, you'd be a member of the double digit club, and your name would be on a plaque in the library. I was one of three kids that were in the triple digit club, so this was dating back a long time. And so I was always really into the literary world and had parents that encouraged it and appreciated that about me and fostered it, and got along really well with adults. My parents.
So, so
Yeah.
you go through high school and you're reading a lot, clearly voraciously, which is very cool. So then did you go to college? What did you study? Did you know right away you wanted to be a writer? How did this all transpire?
So yes, I will say, so yes, I always knew that I wanted to write in some medium. My focus did shift though as I moved into high school. I took classes. I was fortunate that I had parents that were able to send me to different, summer schools and programs. And I used to go to different college campuses to take courses when I was in high school. And so I did a summer at Wellesley. I did a summer at the University of Pennsylvania, a summer at Northwestern. And one of the classes that I took just happened to be screenwriting. it was actually my roommate at the time. I was studying acting and psychology, and my roommate was studying screenwriting. And it had never occurred to me until I, this must have been sophomore, junior year of high school, that you could even write movies. I watched so many movies. I probably watched more movies than I read books, but it never occurred to me that there was a writer of those films. You just don't think about that, when you're younger. Now living in Los Angeles, like my daughter will grow up being hyper aware of that, especially because of what my husband and I do for a living. But where I grew up in Florida, like you just don't think about that. And so a little light bulb went off and I was like, I could do that. She had the script for Minority Report as part of her homework assignment to analyze. And I wrote my first screenplay that summer. And so ever since then, the trajectory completely shifted. I applied to all film schools, and that's how I wound up in the screenwriting program at University of Southern California out here in LA. And just everything snowballed.
One of the best in the world. Yep.
Yes, absolutely. So you go to college for screenwriting, and then how did you break into television? What was your path from that? I mean, just so interesting. It's not an easy path.
No, and I mean these days, it's, dare I say, even harder. But it was certainly not easy back then. I got extremely resourceful. So I was interning a lot in school. So everyone was, off partying, and I was just clocking in hours for free at these studios. Whoever would have me, stocking their fridges, fixing their coffee machines on. In the film world. And so back then, film and TV were really separated. And all of my contacts by the time I was about to graduate were on the feature side of the business. And I didn't know too much about TV writing. It's very different at USC now. There's a much heavier focus on television writing. Back when I went, the focus was really on features. And so I didn't take my first TV writing class until my senior year. And once again, completely changed the trajectory of my life. I fell in love with the idea of writing television. And so I remember my first spec script was about Entourage. So I wrote an episode of Entourage. And
Great
House
show.
MD, if you remember that. So very different, but I took a comedy class, a drama class.
Yep.
And I decided my heart was set on writing for TV, but I did not know a soul in the TV world. And I certainly, when I graduated, there were opportunities to go work for production companies for film. I was like, absolutely not. I want to write television. And I had to get really resourceful since I didn't know anyone. And back when it was more resourceful than creepy, I basically stalked people on, the only social media back then was really Facebook. And so I would go on IMDb. I would look up, at the time, there were 96 shows in production on both the comedy and drama sides. And I contacted anyone I could find who worked on those shows on Facebook. And I said, this is who I am. This is my background. I didn't know at the time that you couldn't even be a writer's assistant without a certain level of experience. So some of my asks were a little bit ridiculous looking back. But I just said, can I send you my resume? I'll do anything on your show. And I actually got interviews from that. And so, and I'm skipping the step where I initially faxed 96 production companies. So after that, I contacted people on social media. So I got some interviews and I got very lucky. I landed a job as a production assistant on Family Guy. And then I was there for 8 years. I got 2 college degrees in the world of Seth MacFarlane. And it was such an unbelievable education, learning the animation industry and comedy writing and just everything, just being his shadow essentially. Toward the end, I was his second assistant, then his first assistant. He had 4 at some point. And so I really got to shadow him toward the end. And that's a whole other, I don't want to bore anyone with.
That's got to be a whole other, a whole other show. Yeah.
Yeah. How I went from like the production assistant to the production coordinator to working directly for him. Like that's a whole other thing. But really just had an amazing education on that show and started writing television from there.
So how did you end up? I mean, now we know you've gotten into matchmaking, and then how'd you end up getting into writing this book?
Yeah. So I wrote the book essentially because I had been a matchmaker for 15 years.
Well, how did you get into that? What led
Yeah.
you into that world?
Yeah, so I was working for Seth at the time. He had no idea. Although, like, thank goodness is supportive now, endorsed the book, he's been a great champion, which is so heartwarming. But at the time, he had no idea I was matchmaking people who worked on his TV shows. I just noticed this trend that I could not understand, that all these men who worked on these shows were married. They seemed to be able to juggle their careers and their home lives. But the women on the show, and I don't want to say categorically because, of course, there are exceptions, but or maybe like dating not the greatest guys, or they were so focused on their career but hadn't yet figured out that other component. And it just felt like, I didn't understand these were phenomenal women, women that I aspired to be one day. And I wanted to try to solve that problem. It felt like not a them problem. It felt like a world problem. Like this can't possibly be them. There's too many of them, first of all. This has to have something to do with either the city we live in or the industry we work in that's making this so challenging. And so I wanted to get to the bottom of it. In college, I was always a natural wingwoman, and I would set up friends. That gets very incestuous very quickly. So I thought, if I spread the word that I have this little matchmaking side hustle and charge $10 a month, I think is what I did back then I could just collect people and have more of a playground to match people from. At the time, I tried recruiting. That was a disaster. I remember just approaching random people, from the guy at Whole Foods to a car salesman, just, I've got this great woman for you. And now it's a referral only business. I think with good reason. But yeah,
Yeah, I was wondering how you vetted everybody, because there's a certain responsibility here when you're introducing people that, so you vetted them because they were referred by someone you knew.
Yes, that
Yeah.
has allowed me to sleep at night for the last
Yeah.
decade plus. I can't even tell you how many companies I consult for where, they run background checks, they do their due diligence. I just need to feel an extra layer of comfort, especially because the women that I work with are referred to me as well. And I like there to be a higher degree of accountability. And so, of course, like you can't guarantee anything in life, but at least I know I've done what I can to protect them as much as possible. And so it did take longer to grow a high quality database as a result, because there is that barrier to entry. But now word has really spread, and it's a great database of people. But I digress. So I built up this company slowly while I was pursuing TV writing, and really fell in love with both. And for the longest time, matchmaking, I kept telling everyone, was a side hustle, side hustle. There was an element of shame almost as the business started to grow, that if I were to focus my energy on that, then people would perceive me as a failure in the writing community.
Mm.
And so I was pretty tight-lipped. I was in writers' rooms, setting up clients in the morning, taking on new clients, going into a TV writer's room, and then not talking about that part of my life at all. And then at night, setting up more matches and meeting other clients. And so I was really juggling all of this, and the worlds were very separated. And then, eventually people started hearing about what I was doing, and then only wanted to know about that. But I did try to keep it as separate as possible, just because of that element of shame that I think a lot of people maybe have when they do have a side business. I had a professor, once tell my classmates and I, if you, in this industry, like, it's all or nothing. The second you take on something else, you're going to end up doing that something else. And there's truth to that. I mean, I spend a lot of time on my writing, yes, but I also spend a lot of time on my business. And the thing that's been such a blessing with this book is it has allowed me to marry, pun fully intended, to marry my passions. And it all came about during this last writer's strike, where I realized, I had this burning desire to tell stories still, but no outlet to do that. And so I went back to my roots.
There it is.
Yeah, there it is. Look at that. I went back to my roots, and what I fell in love with as a child, the medium where it all started with books, I thought, well, that's always been what I really love, and I've never had the time to sit down and write one. Um, I should rewind maybe a few years. During the pandemic, I did write my first manuscript, although it's never seen the light of day. I don't even think my agent knows it exists. So if she's watching this, she'll learn about it. But I wrote like a YA fantasy manuscript in
Mhm.
quarantine. But that really let me know, like, okay, I have what it takes to finish a
Yeah.
book. And it is a massive
And
undertaking.
that's a huge lesson. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think that gave me some confidence during the strike to put out some feelers. I do have a lot of contacts, in just the agency and the representation community. Nobody in the book world that I knew of, but I thought, they're not so separated. If I have clients, who are agents, I said, what if maybe I just slip a proposal to one of them, and very lucky that it was well received and she felt comfortable passing it along to a colleague at her agency, and it grew from there.
Cool.
That
Let me ask you, I assume that from what you've said that most of your clients are women. Uh, let's say a woman approaches you and says, I want to hire you. What's the process? What do you do
Are
after
you
that?
asking for a friend?
No, no, no. I'm just wondering what how you decide what information you have to gather, how you decide to make the match, how do you decide to introduce people, what happens after that kind of thing.
So I typically get multiple emails like this a day. So this is a very easy
I
question to
bet.
answer.
Yeah.
However, I do have male clients as well. So
Okay.
my business model is such that, and this is a whole other thing, but I charge different rates for men and women. It started off the same because I'm a feminist. We should all pay equally in my mind. But what I noticed is there's a hard city to date in, and women, hope it's okay to gender stereotype in this instance. Women, we tend to be able to put our egos aside more easily and acknowledge it's hard out there. I need a little help in this department. I will gladly take it. Here is a reasonable fee to assist me with this process. I found good looking, successful guys who my women wanted to meet were less willing to acknowledge the problem, right? They could meet women on their own, but were they really meeting the women they wanted? No, but they felt like they didn't need help in that department. And so I realized if I, you know, didn't charge anything or charged a nominal fee, but not compared to, nothing compared to what the women pay. And my rates are very affordable. So the women aren't even paying all that much. But if the men didn't have to invest in the same way in our company, if they just had to invest their time and such into the women, it was actually better for the business. It was better for the women that I worked with. And so, but I treat both the men and women the same. If a man comes to me, he's not somebody who, if he's paying less than the woman, he's still going through the same intake. I'm still making the same considerations for him. If it's not a mutual fit, our company, the way that we structure everything, we're not setting up people to fill a quota. We don't guarantee a certain number of matches. So some of these companies, if a man's paying $50,000 for 8 matches and he is in his 60s, but wants that woman who's 30 to 45 years old and looks good in a bikini, they're going to find 8 of those. Now, are those women looking for him? Probably not. Maybe one is, but certainly not all 8. For us, we're only making mutually beneficial introductions. And so I treat those. So my clients are both men and women. As far as how the process works, so an email that I would answer this morning, like it's someone who's referred typically. If they're not, I then explain. I could take you on for date coaching, but not for the matchmaking arm of our company. Date coaching, by the way, is what the whole book really is about, and what I really, truly am passionate about. But for matchmaking, so someone's referred, they are serious about their search and their quality person. If those components are in place, I want to help. Can I help is the other question on the matchmaking side. So I used to say, okay, you met all this criteria. Of course, I'll take you on. This is my rate, and I will find your person. And what I started realizing doing matchmaking is even if you recruit, right? Even if you're not a referral only business, there's only so much that's in your control. As a matchmaker, there's only so whatever the statistical probability is that you know somebody's husband or wife, right? There's no guarantees in our line of work. And so what I started doing is my business partner, Lauren Rosenberg, and we will have someone fill out an intake. And then based on that intake, we will evaluate, do we think we have enough possible matches for them to make a membership worthwhile? If we feel like they're going to sign up and we've got one match for them and then it's not a fit and then they've paid us money and we don't ever want to compromise the integrity of the search to make somebody feel like they're getting their money's worth. So we waitlist almost automatically, and then we activate someone when we feel like we can truly help on that front.
That is so cool. And what I love about this is your integrity, quite frankly. Being single, I was married for a very long time. I went through a bad experience with the quota thing where we've got so many people that you'll match with per month and on and on. And it turned out not to be true. And this was up in Northern California, actually. So I just love that you have so much integrity and honor in how you're doing this business and honesty. I mean, that's fabulous. I mean, really, that's very high quality.
I appreciate that. It's so important to me. And I've seen through consulting at other companies, so many people in your position have that experience. And I fall in love platonically with all of my clients, and I'm so invested in their journeys. And I feel that pain of,
Sure.
feeling like you've made this investment and it's not worthwhile. And I want everyone to know when they're working with me, I will try my absolute best, but I can't make guarantees. And what has given me the ability to do that in a large part is the fact that when I started the business, it wasn't my primary source of income. I was making my money as a TV writer. And so, well, at the time as an assistant. And so because it wasn't my primary source of income, I ran the business in a way that felt like it benefited the client.
Right. Less desperation on your part. Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
That's
which is
so you
fabulous.
were basically Yenta.
Yeah, yeah. Although I guess they were compensated in other ways back then.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Probably milk, and cheese. Yeah.
So tell us more about your book. Okay, so what is your book about? It sounds like there's a lot of benefit in there for people who are single. I've often said I'm looking for my last first kiss. Um, but the same concept. So tell us about that.
yeah. So I want a reader. So I'm not only a matchmaker, I am a dating coach. And so I want the book to feel as if someone just had 10 one-on-one coaching sessions with me. But because my background is in TV writing and I feel like the best movies that I see and the best shows that I see, they have maybe lessons that are embedded, but you don't realize it. You're you're learning something through the eyes of a character and you're walking away having learned something, but you're not watching the film to learn something. It's just a byproduct. And so that's what I want readers to feel about this book. It's three characters are the focus who are based on real life clients of mine. They're composites of clients that I've actually worked with over the years. I want readers to be able to identify with these three clients, at least one, or maybe they'll recognize someone they've dated in the others. And I want them to have essentially the equivalent of what I would impart to them through 10 coaching sessions, but just through reading stories of these three clients' journeys to find love through their coaching with me. And I also have my own story baked in there. My husband was a client of our company. We set him up 5 times. And
Oh,
so
wow.
I share that in the book and how he and I came to be. And then there's also a through line in terms of how we conceived our daughter through IVF. And I guess, spoiler alert, she exists. That's the storyline in the book. But
Love it.
one of the women of the three characters that come to me for coaching and for matchmaking, she says, again, based on a client this happened with, you have a year to find my husband or wife. And if you don't, I am going to be a single mom by choice. I'm doing IVF on my own. And what she didn't know at the time was I was in the middle of my own IVF journey. And so that's sort of the connective tissue that brings readers into my world and my story of how Dave and I met.
Love that.
Wow. Outstanding.
Yeah.
Outstanding.
So, JD, tell us where our viewers can learn more about you and where they can get your book. I know it's coming out in January. So, let's let everybody know how they can get their hands on it.
Absolutely. Anywhere where you would typically buy books, it is available for pre-order, likely on that website. And it comes out January 27th. And you can follow me on, thank you. You can follow me on socials. My handle is at Match Made in Hollywood across all my socials. And what else do you think is beneficial to know? I'd be really excited to hear feedback, in terms of what people
Oh, this is
are
great.
getting out of this book. I want, and I know it's a very lofty goal, but my goal is not for people to read the book and then say, I want to work with you, or I want to sign up for matchmaking somewhere. I want people to read this book and never pick up another self-help book again in the dating space, because they will be their own best dating coach. I want people to trust their
Cool.
intuition. And that's what all my coaching is always about. By the time we're done working together, yes, if I could find your fish, great, I'll do it. But if you could find that fish, if you could learn to be a fisherman, that is, I think,
Well put.
yeah, so
Yeah.
that's my hope.
Wow, you're fantastic. I hope you're going to plan on writing a follow-up book. And we're going
Thank
to want to follow
you.
you as far as your TV writing's concerned as well. You're fantastic. You're a great interview. I mean, I really want to thank you for being on the show, and we'll talk after we, stop the recording.
Yes, we'll sidebar. I should also throw out, because of course Lauren would kill me. Our company website is www.ljmatchmaking.com. So I should throw that in as well. But these
Love it.
LJ.
LJ for Lauren and JD. But
Okay. LJ
fantastic
matchmaking that.
questions.
No, 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 absolutely.
Yeah, I really appreciate your time.
Great. So,
Well,
Doug,
this
I'll
was
throw it back to
fantastic. You
you.
you
Yeah.
you are so much fun to talk to, and your journey from point A to B to C to D is just unbelievable, and we really appreciate you sharing it with us. It's just great, and good luck with the book.
Yeah, you're
Thank you
making a
so
difference
much.
in people's lives.
Yeah,
So that's really outstanding.
yeah.
I really hope so. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Well, that wraps up this episode of Get to Know here on the Outliers YouTube channel and podcast series. As you know, we will be back with other interviews down the road. And until then, keep reading, keep writing, keep having fun, and try not to get caught.